Jimmy Giliberti, I'm with WorldViz. And WorldViz is a company that's been doing VR for 10 years, enterprise level VR. But we can talk about that after this. Tonight is the women in VR. And I'm going to ask them all to come out and introduce themselves. Instead of me actually doing that, I think that they're going to be better at talking about where they came from, what they're doing, and where they see the industry going. So could I ask everyone to come out, please? And take a seat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask everyone from my left to go and walk down the row here. First, a quick introduction, who you are and who you're with, and we're eventually going to go into what your company does and where you see VR. But for now.
Hey. Hello. Hey, I'm Theresa, CEO of Temple Gates Games, and we make VR games. We've got games on the Gear, the Vive, and the Rift, and that's about it. We're making VR games.
Oh, hello. Hello, my name is Thea Baumann. I'm the CEO of Metaverse, Makeovers. We make augmented reality fashion accessories that interact with an augmented reality app that is cross-platform. I'm actually Australian, if you're trying to figure the accent, and we're normally based between Shanghai in China and in Melbourne, and increasingly in the US now. And yes, I am wearing an eye patch, and yes, I am a pirate.
Here, let me do. Should I do the other side? Oh, all right.
All right. Hello, testing. Okay, I'm Jody Belliveau, and I work with WeVR out of Venice, California. We are a studio that creates content as well as a technology house that creates content that distributes it and powers it, and that's the part of the company that I head up.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Mandel. I'm a VR consultant in the healthcare industry. So I work with medical professionals and hospitals, and we're working on how to implement VR in hospitals and how to use it in a variety of ways to improve patient experiences. Previously, I worked at Samsung with WeVR, was one of our portfolio companies as well.
Hi guys, my name is Erica Lee. I just moved to the Bay Area and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the CEO and founder of AstrX, which is a digital marketing automation company, and I just founded a VR education app company called Meteor 360. And we're here to inspire people to learn through gamification and immersion. Yeah.
Howdy, I'm Gemma. I work with Discovr Labs. We do VR education and training. Before that, I worked at Hack Club teaching kids how to code and did some research at Caltech.
Great, thank you. In order for us to get an idea of how to go and set our presentations today, I just wanted to do a quick question for the audience. And this goes back to how deep you already are on VR. How many people have had a VR experience, have gone into VR before? How many of those were Oculus? And how many were Vive? And how many were Gear VR? And Cardboard? Okay, very good. How many people are in the industry? And how many people want to get into the industry? Okay, great. So on that note, let's go and find out how our panel got into the industry. Theresa?
Sure. Hey, so actually, my mom is a game developer, and I've seen her success at Electronic Arts and other companies, and I was really inspired by that. So since I graduated college, I studied psychology with a focus on optics. So going into gaming and then having VR kind of becoming the hotness right now has been perfect for me. So I worked at EA and Maxis for almost a decade on games like Spore, SimCity, The Sims, Godfather, and eventually started an indie studio and made a game called Cannon Brawl, which is out for PC, Mac, and Linux, and coming soon to PlayStation and Xbox. And I love game jams. So basically, I do all kinds of game jams. I did the Oculus VR jam and had a really great experience with that and decided I want to do this full time and formed a company with my friends. So that's where Temple Gates came from. And that's why I'm here today and talking about VR and loving it.
Okay, so my background is actually in fine arts, and I used to basically hack game engines when I was at art school and make weird, like, psychological machinima immersive experiences and project them in, like, white galleries and basically try and emulate virtual reality without actually having the tools. This is when I was back at art school. So, yeah, I think that supplemented by the fact that I was just a little club kid basically led me into making virtual reality experiences and augmented reality experiences. But we build our apps with Unity, so I guess it kind of moved from using like new media software tools like Max MSP and Wild Tangent, which is like a PC. Yeah, you're nodding your head, you know about it. Yeah, I was well in that. And then moved over to like more sophisticated tools like Unity.
I got started working in technology about 16 years ago, developing interactive television, which was a 2-screen experience. So you would watch TV and then have your laptop and watch supplemental content on that. So that was my first job. And so ever since then, I've just been very focused on building software and entertainment experiences that bring the user closer to the content. Was really into the WebGL thing that came out, 2009, 2010. Did a couple experimental projects with Disney. And just continued building my portfolio and career around entertainment video streaming apps. And then it just so happened that WeVR was looking for a director of product, and I was looking for a place to go. And so I got the opportunity to combine my experience into the VR space.
My background is in marketing and PR, and while I was at Samsung, I was marketing manager, and I led all of the marketing VR initiatives, and that was actually completely my first experience with VR. Before that, I founded a PR agency. I lived in Israel, worked with European and Israeli startups in actually fashion tech and e-commerce, and Samsung was interested in working more with startups when it came to software, and there was a content component, so they brought me over, and I was just blown away. I remember the first time I tried VR, it was actually at this GDC VR mixer, and my first experience was a fashion show, and a diesel fashion show, and I just thought this was unbelievable. And through my work at Samsung and helping them, find portfolio companies and seeing the types of companies that they have been investing in VR, I really began to understand that, wow, this can go so much further than entertainment, and it can go so much further than games, and it can go in the healthcare industry. And I recently left about 2 months ago to really pursue that passion of mine, which stems from personal experience. I had 2 major surgeries when I was an adolescent, and I really understood that there's something broken with the experience that we have when we undergo a trauma in the hospital, and also when it comes to rehabilitation. And I was really just very privileged. Through Samsung, I got to get to know a bunch of professors at Stanford and medical professionals, and they looped me into projects that they've been doing. And it's just the beginning, and it's really amazing to see how VR can really help with rehabilitation and help people prepare for major traumas, and then help them repair from those traumas as well.
Hey guys, so for me, for VR, I got to try the Oculus when it came out, and I liked it, but it was still pretty new. But the real, I guess, game changer for me was, if you guys know when the Star Wars movie came out, Verizon did a partnership with like Google Cardboard, and they like sent out all these like R2-D2 Star Wars themed headsets, the Google Cardboard ones. And I started playing around with like the Star Wars app and getting more into the mobile VR space, which I'm in right now. And for me, my background's in marketing. I have a marketing company, and right now, like video on web is like the highest converting, and it's like the best marketing tool. And I've seen a lot of my friends' companies start experimenting in like 360 video as marketing tools, and seeing how effective it is to engage users and get them to like interact with the content versus just see it at face value. And so yeah, I was able to integrate some like 360 video into my marketing campaigns, and from there, I've always had a personal like, I guess, connection to want to improve education. I dropped out of engineering school a couple years ago, and I'm very big on like self-taught, like self-learning. So I see VR as like a good closed-loop learning tool to teach yourself in an immersive environment. So my life's very serendipitous, and I'm a startup founder, so I just start things whenever I feel like it. And I started my VR education app company a couple months ago, and we've been creating different videos to educate people outside of just gaming. And yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Cool. So long story short, hackathons. I was in high school going to a bunch of hackathons, building a bunch of games. I got a job with a nonprofit called Hack Club, where essentially I organized hackathons instead for a living. And I was just going to hackathons every weekend. I was building games every weekend. And at some point, the Oculus came out, and somebody just kind of shoved it into my lap and was like, why don't you try building something different? And I did. And I very much enjoyed it. And I think what I enjoyed the most was the developer process was just so drastically different to like anything I'd ever done. I'd always built in Unreal and Unity, but some of the stuff that you do as a game developer, if you do that as a VR developer, you're going to make people puke. So being able to discover new techniques was really fascinating. So I kind of just involved VR into the nonprofit that I was working with. I started doing a whole bunch of random VR freelance. And then I kind of just got introduced to people who introduced me to other people. And I found this really awesome dude named Josh who had really similar interests to me. I was really passionate about education and also VR. And together we were able to come together to do something that does both.
Okay, I think I want to start in the middle on this one. As you're talking about the creation of content, each of you have come from different areas before. What was the jump as you went from, in this case, Jody, I'm going to ask you, you were in interactive technology, and now you're in something that is much more 360, it's global. How does that change your storytelling?
Well, I mean, I focus on building UIs that users interact with so they can get to their content. So it's been, a challenge to go from a 2D interface into a 3D world. And we have the conversation daily about that's going to make someone sick. So the sick factor is something we definitely talk about. But, instead of the UI being in front of the user that they're interacting with, now the user is inside of the UI. And so, and even though the user can turn all the way around, in gear seated experiences, you don't really want to make them turn all the way around to access everything. So you really want to think about how they're actually moving in the chair, what's in their field of view, and giving them access to those areas instead of burying it behind them, unless there's something that you really don't want them to do, so you bury it behind them. Experiencing that kind of thing and building UI for that has been challenging and cool, but I like doing things I've never done before, so it's been very gratifying. And then, coming up with new interaction styles, like right now, metadata. So when you are shopping on iTunes and you're looking at the rating and the runtime and the description, it's all very clinical and there in front of your face, but you want it there because that you're shopping for content. So when you're in a 3D space, how does that change? How can you make that more engaging, more exciting? So we've started with the movie poster, and instead of just a 2D poster in front of you, we have these domes, and the entire dome is the poster of the movie or the piece. So we're starting there, and then we're, edging our way towards making the actual metadata a little more interactive and interesting. But we just take it step by step because you can really get lost in the weeds very quickly. And so that's been the biggest learning thing for me is to not go too far too fast and really take one piece at a time and perfect it and then move forward.
Gemma, you teach this, so how do you move someone who might have learned UI or programming into this new field? What kind of lessons do you have?
Yeah, so Discovr doesn't necessarily teach VR to people. I guess we train people in VR or teach them through VR. So think vocational training for nurses. We have experiences for that. But I can't speak to that. So I used to work for a nonprofit where we taught kids to code. I did run a VR workshop several times because that's what I was passionate about. But it is very interesting to teach VR because there's so many things you have to account for that just aren't evident in any other sort of technology or kind of things that you have to look at. So like you mentioned, like seeing things behind you, like you have to be able to format things in a way that you are showing like the viewer what they want to see immediately, because they're not always going to turn around, and sometimes you know they don't know, and you'll be in a demo and you'll be like, hey, you can actually look around, it's like 360. I can speak so much to UI and UX. I'm definitely more on the development side, but I think the biggest take back that I've seen from teaching people how to develop for VR is looking at mistakes constantly. So you'll see a lot of people, once they try VR, you know, they'll immediately tell you about the downfalls of it, and it's usually making people sick. So there's a lot of things that you have to learn about, in general, just what makes people sick. So did a bunch of research. Basically, it comes down to like a hormonal type of deal with like motion parallax and shape from shading. So you figure out how to account for that in your development, which makes a really big difference ultimately.
Do storyboards help?
Well, my games are typically less narrative, so storyboarding is something I've started doing. But I think that you just made a point that I wanted to speak to a little bit, which was I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But I'll come back to it. But in general, I totally agree with the UI thoughts that have been being mentioned. Like, for example, like you think about coming from traditional PC or console gaming, which is where I come from, you can have a heads-up display, and usually that's something that gives you UI around the periphery of your screen, which is a fixed rectangle in front of you. If you wanted to do something like that in VR, you have to think about, okay, so in VR, you have a very limited cone of where you can put readable text, and that's right in the center of the camera. So that's not on the periphery. So if you want to have a heads-up display, you have a problem where the text at the edges are not readable. But if you keep the heads-up display fixed relative to the orientation of the user's head, then the text isn't going to be readable. If you keep it in one position and let the user look around, they're going to have issues where that UI is blocking the content of the game. So there's just a zillion of these crazy, wacky gotchas that you learn from mistakes. Like, you just have to figure it out and go. And I think one of the things that's been frustrating for me as a developer is rushing in with all these ideas, and they might even be good ideas, but they're things that people are just so unused to that you have to kind of like pare back and go with like kind of a less cool thing. Like, instead of reaching out and grabbing something with your hand, you just put a button. And that's not as cool, but people just don't intuitively reach out and grab because everyone's been playing games and using media for a long time. So I think kind of, for me, it's meeting users where they're at is the big takeaway for my designs. It's like, you have all these romantic ideas, and then you just have to kind of like be realistic about it.
Thea, you're in the AR, or at least focused on the AR. And how is that from how you have to think of UI, or at least, because it's very different, and taking your background and moving that forward? I have one of your nails on here.
Yeah, I guess I'll just talk quickly about what the user experience is, but essentially it's a very new way of engaging not only with your phone, but with fashion and with virtual content. But the idea is that you wear, this is one of my first products, Metaverse nails, and you would scan with the app your nails, and when it latches onto the pattern, then it triggers the virtual content or the augmented reality experience. So essentially, I guess for me, because it's such a new way of engaging with your phone, I mean, within the augmented reality space, everyone is so used to looking at the world. Like, they'll look through their phone to basically see where they need to go with some like GPS AR experience or whatever. They don't actually scan themselves, right? You don't do this with your phone, really. So that's actually a very new way of engaging with mobile technology and with AR. And so embedded within that is like, how do I educate my user base that this is really what it's all about? And essentially you're like wearing augmented reality. It's not like augmented reality wearables where, you know, you're wearing Google Glass or whatever and then you can see out through that at some AR mediated experience. It's actually like, conceptually, it's like, oh, I actually have a 3D heart attached to my body. And that is a completely different way of gauging with AR. And I think like fundamentally as an artist, because I don't really think like an engineer in that specific way, I can like kind of think outside of the box about how to engage with AR and find value within it in a different way. Yeah.
Rebecca, have you done anything with other devices? I know you're in the medical side of things, like either haptic devices or anything other than just the wearing or controllers, or is it consumed in the same fashion as any other VR?
So it's actually been interesting. I've been, you know, like everyone's saying, oh, healthcare and for the people in the industry, like you would think that this is something that's relatively new because now there's a bunch of apps that are coming up with the new HMDs. But I've been going back old school and visiting a lot of VR caves, which is a totally different experience. Like a VR cave, just to give you an idea, costs something like 2 million euros. Just because I was visiting places in Europe and in Israel, and you can actually like strap yourself to an experience, and it's basically this like massive home theater. And for example, if you had a stroke and you needed to have some sort of physical rehabilitation, there's an actual treadmill where the clinician will put you on the treadmill, and all of a sudden, there's games like your body will become a boat, and you have to go in between buoys. And there's, the clinician completely controls the level. So, by the way, it's scary. Even for somebody who didn't have to go through physical rehabilitation, it's unbelievable. They strap you up. So I've seen a lot of different things. Clearly, that's something that's not scalable, right? So that's why not many people have heard about these VR caves in the medical thing, because it's in many ways more of a, I don't want to say because it's highly effective, but it's a bit of a like marketing thing because, it shows like how high tech they are in the hospital that they're using it. But right now, the real question is, which HMD to even use and what kind of, technology, because there's certain companies that are building their own hardware, which is good, but also expensive and harder for consumer adoption or even adoption within hospitals from a B2B level. And even, the HTC Vive and Oculus is quite expensive, right, to buy at scale. So certain companies are starting to create content more for Google Cardboard and a lot also on Samsung Gear VR, but the Gear VR is also difficult because you need a Samsung phone, and Google Cardboard almost, it costs almost nothing, and you can take home, and kids can do exercises, and it's great because, if you're 8 years old, you can use Google Cardboard and nobody's concerned. But the flip side is that, it's not as immersive an experience, and you have to wonder, does it take longer to achieve what you want to achieve? So I would say that's one of the biggest challenges, that there's so much out there, but there's not, one or two platforms or HMDs that are being adopted. It's just still very early on.
Erica, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can add, I guess, a little bit about what I've learned about healthcare and like VR. I recently went to the X-Tech and also the AW conference, and Adam Ghazali's lab is like using VR to help people with ADD and like learning development disorders, but they're combining it with BCI and other like EEG and other biosensors to be able to pick up data in your body. So they're still working on research to see like what components of VR with like heat maps and different tracking within the video and engagement with your body are being used so they can be able to create content that is more like following the natural human intuitive moments. And also there's a company called, I guess, Aloha VR. They're using Samsung Gear VR to help like elder patients that have dementia be able to like visit cool tropical scenes and feel relaxed. Because right now, a lot of elders in nursing homes, they're by themselves, and instead of using like pain medication, they want to use VR as a tool. There's also another company called Deepstream VR that's helping with chronic pain management. So they've actually done a lot of research studies that say VR with like opiates and painkillers like have the most increased effects with pain reduction, but VR by itself is actually the second most powerful above just taking medication. And yes, in terms of like user adoption, the reason I decided to go into mobile VR is the fact that just the market accessibility with people having smartphones is there. Obviously, mobile VR, you're not able to do like have more input controllers and more engagement with the video. But for me, I think the VR industry is probably at least 3 years with like really good content. I think consumer VR is going to take a while to develop content just because we don't have feedback on analytics and big data. But I think in terms of like, you know, YouTube has YouTube 360 and video, there's all these like free web platforms and 360 cameras coming out so people to shoot content and just get used to like this new platform. So I'm really excited to see what's going to be there in terms of like healthcare and user adoption. Oh, also, all the surveys that we've been running for my company, the two biggest things that we're seeing with like why there's barriers to entry with user adoption is one, people don't actually have a VR headset at home. They don't really know the components to buy an Oculus or a Vive, you know, the computer engine, the graphics card. And two, motion sickness, and like they don't feel comfortable wearing the headset on their face for a while. So for people in, oops, I'm dropping my stuff. People in like design and fashion, when it comes to like creating VR headsets, I think that's something to be very mindful of. I know like the Oculus headset, like it doesn't move back and forth, I guess eye-directionally. So I was wearing it and was like stuck, and my eyelashes are kind of getting stuck all over it. And if you look at some of the AR glasses, they like stick only on your nose bridge. And if you're Asian and you don't have a nose bridge, then like I guess you can't wear the Epson glasses. So I think in terms of like style and design, you got to really think about different face shapes, because the more comfortable it is, the more people are going to wear it longer, and the longer they wear it, the more they're going to engage with the content. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think your question was what were like the HMDs that are most popular or being adopted right now?
That could be one.
Okay. That's what I understood. I think the two obvious really big headsets are the Oculus and the Vive. I definitely see the Oculus becoming less and less popular. But I think what people are looking for right now is a really quick way to get immersed. But I don't know if that'll last. So I think the Vive is the fan favorite for now. And Oculus is being used less by the people that are involved in VR right now due to the fact that there is no room scale.
So the walking makes a difference.
Exactly, yeah. But I'm also not sure if that's something that every single person that's consuming VR is going to want. Something that was brought up in a panel like last week was that sometimes people don't actually want to move in VR. They don't want to be immersed to a point where they have to reach out and grab things. Maybe they just want to sit back and consume, kind of like you're just watching Netflix. So that might be something where like mobile VR can come in very heavily. I only see Google Cardboard lasting for so long, and I think that just comes fundamentally from the company and the way that they design things. So Google Documentation and the Google VR team says that they created Google Cardboard as a gateway drug, basically. It is never intended to be used for more than 2 to 3 minutes, and they designed it specifically that way. That's why the Google Cardboard was never offered with a headband, why the magnets tend to not work, or cheaper versions are just don't come with a magnet at all. It's meant to lead consumers from Google Cardboard to something like Gear VR, or what I call the Alibaba headset, which is like the $13 plastic Google Cardboard-ish thing with a headband that you can buy from Alibaba for super cheap. But I don't know what the biggest HMD is going to be yet. For now and for like the foreseeable 6 months, it'll probably be the Vive, just because they treat developers better, probably, and they just have better support and documentation. But it's to be seen.
So let's kind of walk down this way in how do you create your content when there is a Vive and a Cardboard, and what do you choose? This is an age-old development question. What platform do you choose? Do you do one first? Is it because of money? Is it because of time? Is it because of ease? What are your reasons?
So I'll answer to that really quickly before passing it off. Before I know the obvious option was to sell through the Oculus store just because they reached more people. Lately, Oculus made the decision that if you have a consumer Rift, if you buy content off the Oculus store, your computer will be able to detect if you're using a Vive or an Oculus or some sort of other HMD. And if you are not using an Oculus, you will not be able to view that content, which is kind of like Oculus trying to monopolize a market that does not yet exist, which is really difficult. So I think most people right now as developers are trying to release through the Steam store because they do not tell you which HMD you can use. So if you release through the Steam store, if you're on an Oculus, you can use it. If you're on a Vive, you can use it.
For me, on mobile VR, we're in the process of creating our own video platform to host our content, but there's free VR players, literally called Free VR Player, Video, YouTube 360. Actually, people are like in the video processing. There's a company called Bitmovin that it now supports actually like VR videos in a web player. So we've been able to actually figure out that back end, but it's not 100% reliable. So if the video is not working on time, that will be a problem. In mobile VR, you're seeing problems where the video, in terms of the connectivity, like the streaming, if it's lagging in the streaming, it's going to ruin the experience. Being able to like locally store it and get people to download is something that we're seeing as a barrier to have people repeat use with VR. Because right now, most people will use VR like on a one-time basis, but developing that habit and getting them to go back to it versus just using 2D and mobile is something that we haven't jumped the curve yet in terms of an industry whole. And I can't really speak too much about Oculus and like the other gaming engines, but people have been developing stuff on Unity, and I think the Vive also is going to be probably the forefront right now with I guess tethered HMDs, because it has like the laser scanning sensors, it has like the room, you're able to detect the room outside, and also the headset looks cooler in my opinion.
What I've seen, it really depends on what the intent is. So from a rehabilitation perspective, like anything that's tethered or with, what? Oh, nothing. Anything that's tethered, it's just problematic, right? Because of the space and because of the equipment and because you might have people like in a wheelchair or whatnot. So that doesn't really work, and we've tended to use the Gear VR. When it comes to taking it home, then of course we tend to use more cardboard, and that's more used for like training purposes or reminding people how to do exercises or showing them how to do exercises. When it comes to like tackling, for example, anxiety, really depends, but I've seen things on Vive that's really lovely, also on Oculus. So it just depends on what the intent is.
So at WeVR, we're really focused on the relationship with the creators. And so our distribution platform is geared to get the creators on as many platforms as possible. So as I understand it, our company had the HTC Vive a long time before a lot of other places did. So we immediately went into executable content. So that's CG, and we developed the Blue, if you guys are familiar with that. And then we started to see the problem that creators are running into, where they have to create different content for every single platform they want to be on. So we created a video engine, and at least for a 360 video, you can create your content once, get it on transport, and we will publish it across all different HMDs for you. So that's one. So we're trying to really lower the barrier of entry for creators, and create kind of an interoperable file format. So that's one way we're tackling it. So right now we're on the Vive and we're on the Gear, and we're definitely working on other clients to come out on other platforms. But the data that we're seeing, if you want to go mass market, it's definitely all about 360 video. But if you want repeat engagement, it's all about the interactive content. We're seeing about 10-to-1 interactivity with our interactive content versus our 360.
Okay, so I guess my approach is a little bit different again. So I consider what we're making it's a wearable augmented reality content distribution platform, essentially. So we actually build our own platform. And within that, we have an augmented reality marketplace of virtual content that you can buy. And all of that virtual content is designed in-house by our artists and our artistic collaborators. So, for example, you can open the app and there's like a range of collectible augmented reality designs. So we create all our content in-house and the interactivity around that content to drive the user engagement back into the app, to wear it, to share it, to snap it, to buy it, essentially. In terms of our content creation, we collaborate with a range of online communities to co-create the content. So recently we collaborated with the Sailor Moon fan art community, and they made a whole heap of Sailor Moon designs that we integrated into the app as these hologram characters that fly out of the nails. That's just like one example. We've collaborated with internet artists that have a bit of a cult following to create content that like fly out of the nails, like hologram memes. We've got another collaboration coming up with like cyber it girls to turn themselves into hologram selfies, like cyber girls that fly out of the nails, kind of like Princess Leia. So I guess, you know, that's our approach is, what we're really selling and what we're offering is a unique way to engage with augmented reality content. It's just like on you and you become the wearer of it. You become like the living platform for this virtual content to like inhabit you. So I guess that's our approach with content creation.
Wow, I love everything that comes out of your mouth. Like I've heard a couple of different points about some of the different headsets and the different strengths and advantages and disadvantages. And I think what's going on right now is each headset that's out there really does have like a superpower. Like you've got the Gear, and that's mobile. I mean, you can take it away from your computer. You can take it. I go out on my commute on the train. I can be doing my VR work, or I've actually found that it really helps me with my fear of flying to just get on an airplane and have VR that's taking me out of the experience of being on an airplane. I can really calm down with that. And then you have things like Vive. It's already set up with Steam. There's a huge community. There's a store already all set up for you. So as a developer, that's just too good to be true. And then Oculus Rift is great because their developer relations get those headsets out to everyone really quickly. And there's just a ton of advantages. So as a developer, I also want to have my content on all the headsets I can have it on. We're using a custom engine, which is super weird. Most people are on Unity, Unreal. But using a custom engine gives you the resilience if there is a change in those existing engines. Like just this last weekend, if any of you guys are using one of the most popular game engines out there, Unity, they have changed their pricing model. And I think that being a little bit resilient to some of those big changes and not having the black box can be super helpful. Also, because VR is really right out at the bleeding edge, you really have to do, well, what we have to do is a lot of hacks to eke the most possible performance out, especially when you're doing with mobile VR. So like if you're trying to create content that goes on all of the different platforms, and one of your platforms is a phone, you really have to go kind of creative crazy to try and figure out how are you going to get this game that plays on the PC also playing on the phone when you have to double draw all the geometry for your stereoscopic. And the other thing that I super like is the Gear that has the little focus adjustment. So I'm really hoping that all of the hardware makers are kind of like doing reconnaissance on all the other hardware out there and can take all those features and sort of make some super headsets that combine all the best from everyone.
Okay. Let's stay there, go back the other way. And how does one learn? How does one get into? I mean, if you were just coming into VR now and you need to get trained up, how would you do it?
Personally, I think everyone is making it up. It's just so new. And I know there's going to be people who are saying, I've been doing VR for 600 years. But the reality is a lot of this is really new, and people, like all of us right now, we are coming up with things, I guarantee you, that no one has ever done before, and those things are getting copied. Some of those things are not necessarily always the best things. They're still getting copied because we're just so new. So the best thing you can do is go out, play as many experiences as you can. When you have a friend that has different games, play all of those games and just take notes in your head of what you're seeing, and then just go do game jams and you don't have to do game jams if you don't make games, but I like game jams.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm pretty self-taught in many ways. And yeah, I completely agree. Everyone here is just doing new things with it. But yeah, I think for me, fundamentally, I really just like breaking things and just seeing what happens. And it's through the kind of deconstruction and the just breaking it, and you see what works and what doesn't, and then you learn from that, and then you just step forward. But yeah, it's just basically a black void. You just keep flying out into the black void. That's what it's like.
So I don't think my advice is much different than if you wanted to get into any industry. I mean, if you're passionate about it, consume everything you can about it. Set up a Google alert, follow things that are interesting to you. If it's healthcare and virtual reality, get those search words in that engine and have it ping you every time there's an article. Read it. I think one cool thing about the virtual reality space is the community is actually really welcoming. And so eager to share. So join a Facebook group, come to events like this, talk to people, and just follow your passion. I mean, I feel like that's really all you need is just to love what you do and do it all the time.
Yeah, I would say just don't be intimidated. I don't have a technical background at all. I come from marketing and kind of the content side of things. And that's all you really need. This community, like people are saying, is people are making things up. It's not very often that a new medium is created and that you can be involved. And the beauty about VR is that they need people from all different types of backgrounds. So for example, I joined an AR VR Women's Academy. I think that there are a few women out here. I see Stephanie here. And again, I didn't have any technical background. Some people did, some people didn't. We learned a little bit about Unity. We had a couple of sessions about taking 360 footage and editing. And beyond the actual classes itself, it was just really meeting other like-minded people who are interested in it and, going to events and learning about them. There was a woman that worked at Paramount for, I think, like 15 years and, just really interesting people and backgrounds. And, I'm thinking from the medical perspective, I mean, doctors don't have a background in VR, but they're dying to get involved in it, right? And I need to understand what they need, and they need somebody, like me to kind of connect the dots, and then they need somebody from the technical world, but the technical guy doesn't know what what kind of content that they have to create. So I really think that's what's awesome about VR. Why I'm passionate about it. It's super exciting, and it's really, really exciting to be part of something that you can actually have a role in creating. So don't just continue, like you said, going to events. Go to hackathons. I think hackathons are even great. Even again, if you don't have a technical background, just going and meeting people and finding your people.
Hey guys, yeah, I totally agree. Go to a hackathon. I went to my first hackathon a couple weeks ago. I call myself like a pseudo engineer because I dropped out of engineering school, and I know like HTML and like MySpace profiles back when I was like a teenager, like some Java and just a lot of World of Warcraft and like video games. But I went to a hackathon and I made so many hackers and developers, and it's such a welcoming community. You kind of just have to be a little bit more assertive if you want to get to know people, because people won't engage or like start conversations. Yeah, a lot of like, like a lot of startup competitions. They're usually free. Definitely engage on Facebook meetup groups. And I just listened to a podcast by Kevin Kelly on Tim Ferriss' show, and he says there's like no VR experts in the industry. And I totally agree. It's such a blue ocean, and you can be an expert if you just start creating content. Download every single VR app on the game store. Anytime you see saying a Samsung Gear, like put it on your face, And also, like for me, I've just started taking photos of when I'm out at events and like posting about it and hashtagging. And social media is like so viral. People actually have introduced me to all these like leaders in the VR and AR industry, and they're very approachable because they're, especially if you're a developer or a content creator. A lot of companies are, they're dependent on their success with great content and user adoption. So, yeah. And if you're an entrepreneur, just hang out around other entrepreneurs, go to co-op spaces. Don't be afraid to meet new people, and go ahead and start drinking the purple juice as I did.
Yo, +1 for hackathons. I have been to many hackathons. I was like my entire life for 2 years. And I think I learned every single thing that I know about VR or game development was taught to me like at a hackathon at like 2 a.m. by people I had never met before. Just like super evangelist pitch here, like hackathons are some of the most welcoming environments where people are just dedicated to sit down from anywhere between like 24 to 72 hours to just learn something. And like not knowing something is totally fine also. I made my first game at a hackathon in 24 hours and I didn't know how to do anything. And somebody just sat me down and was like, you're gonna learn Unity. I was like, okay. So hackathons are great. VR is an incredible industry in that it requires so much evangelism. So unlike other tech industries, this is one where you can really break into if you don't have any technical background, because VR is just so much of giving people demos and convincing people that it is amazing, and once they try it on, they discover that also. But if you do want to get into it, I do suggest learning not really learning, but I guess familiarizing yourself with the technology. So I know one really important thing to do is, especially if you're not going to be on the technical side, so you have expectations of the people who are on the technical side of when you're working with them in VR, understanding how difficult it is to work with Unity and Unreal, and what kind of things they have to go through, and that's kind of relative to almost any technical position, but familiarizing yourself with the technology and also knowing all the updates that come out is very important. Other than that, join Facebook groups, many Facebook groups. I've met most of the people here because of Facebook. So, yeah.
Oh,
May I add something to what you're saying? It took me 6 years to break into fashion industry. For VR, it took me 6 months.
there you go. Heard it from him himself. There's also I'll post this, I guess, in the event group. There's like a great Trello map that is like a huge industry overview, but all the HMDs, like scanners, content creators by studio, and like user applications. That's like a really good knowledge source. And yeah, also go to hackathons. They're super amazing. I've never went to one, and then I learned about BCI in like 12 hours because they're such immersive environments. So yeah, that's all I could add.
So we're about to go to some questions and answers. So get the audience to ask us some stuff. But what I'm interested in is your view of where VR is going. Say 5 years, 10 years, just a little bit of blue sky. But where would you either think it's going or where would you like to see it go? We'll start on here with Theresa.
I think it's going to do a big pivot. Right now, I think when people put on that headset, it's a very isolating experience. That's not 100%. There are some cool things. There's alt space. There's cool social stuff. But the vast majority of things out there are single player or single user experiences, and they're not connecting you to other people. And I think that's going to change. There's going to be a lot more in the way of connecting people socially, and I think that's going to be really huge.
I think the online-offline dynamic is going to get very, very interesting. So, I've started to see VR being used in weird pop-up kind of installations and shopping experiences. So I kind of think there's going to be like an infusion of like the whole virtual reality experience on the streets. You're going to see a lot of kind of like weird crossover stuff there. And I guess like... really the storytelling experience might get a lot more interesting, I hope. So, kind of really immersive cinematic experiences just basically on your eyeballs, right?
5 years, okay. Well, I'm in entertainment, so my dream is that when you come home from work, you'll put on some VR and watch some VR content instead of your Netflix. And maybe you'll get away and go visit something exotic or experience something you couldn't experience in your town or living room. And it's really just budding right now, and I brought a demo, so I'd love to show you guys transport. And in the fashion space, we have Mink here tonight who shot a fashion piece for their shoes, and so I'd love for you guys to check it out. I think it's like, titillating to see kind of where things will go in fashion and entertainment, and you can kind of see how Weaver's kind of wading into those waters. But yeah, we hope that you are tuning in every night to some VR content instead of a flatty.
So a couple of things as far as trends, I completely agree with. I'm sorry, the woman with the beautiful purple hair, your name? Theresa. When it comes to social, I mean, I think like the whole concept of telepresence, you know, when Skype came out, everybody was so excited that they could speak to like their parents, you know, in their year abroad or whatever, or to their great aunt. Imagine being able to, you know, I don't know, go shopping together, or, you know, beyond just watching content, playing with content together. I think that's something that's amazing. I think that we'll be moving more towards a mixed reality, probably closer to like 7 to 10 years, but that's something that can be really, really interesting to watch. And then when it comes to healthcare, I mean, we're also trying, you know, I see that hospitals are trying to find a way to incorporate the parents more. So, you know, during a surgery, the parent can't necessarily come into the room, but would be able to talk to the child, and the child would be able to, you know, share an experience together and be calmed down by the parent. So definitely a social element. It's amazing. I mean, it helps in so many different things. Like gamification is really huge when it comes to, you know, rehabilitation, even when it comes to mental health, anxiety, and depression. And we all know that our social, you know, community and our network is so important to us. It's what makes us happy, and it's what makes us thrive. So to be able to also incorporate that, and to be able to, you know, play games together, or to support, you know, our friends, or help them heal together, I think is very powerful, and hopefully is the direction that it's going.
Yeah, I guess VR in 5 years, I see like a VR headset being like a staple household item, like an Xbox. I mean, the fact that Oculus is combining it with the Xbox, you know, hand control already says a lot. I mean, you heard it here first, resistance is futile. Like, we're all gonna start having VR faces and wearing different headsets, and it's the first time in history where it's socially acceptable to mount a TV to your face. And I mean, I think like long term, I can see it being really helpful with people with learning developmental disorders, and also, you know, they're using VR for PTSD because immersion therapy is something that's so powerful. And also with like real estate and tourism, you're able to like travel and see different homes and environments, you know, in terms of businesses, that just cuts down your costs and operating expenses like significantly. They're already using it with like 3D architecture and modeling. In terms of consumer VR, I think a lot of the, you know, a lot of the HMDs and headsets, the prices are going to drop, and I think we're going to see, you know, we're going to see a lot more people adopting them just because the prices are dropped and there's a lot more content. And, oh yeah, I also think everyone was mentioning like social VR. I think when you're able to interact with people in VR, that's going to increase the user adoption. There, you could actually already do video conferencing in VR. There's a app called AltSpace VR, and has a Slack integration, so it's fun, but the meetings are kind of unproductive because everyone's having too much fun. But I think when it comes to just engagement and being able to interact with people, also I think there's going to be huge improvements with like different input devices, as well as like haptic feedback. Right now they just have these clunky vests with like vibrations and the sensors, and the comfort's not really there. But I think, and there's some companies that are doing like ultrasound frequency to like simulate touch. I think if we have touch in addition to like the 360 environments and the 360 audio, that's going to really make a tipping point for VR.
So next 5 years, I don't see it becoming a household object. I see it becoming like a semi-popular household object that, you know, maybe 1 or 2 out of every 5 houses has. The reason I see that is because I think PlayStation, not Xbox, is going to be the biggest player coming up, because they have PSVR pretty much ready to go. And what's really, I guess, beneficial to them is that most people who are gamers have a PlayStation 4 in their house. So they're going to sell it kind of like they sold the PSP or the PSP Vita or Go. It was like, hey, you have this thing that already works, but we made like a kind of better, maybe better, mostly different version of it. And you're going to buy it even if you don't know if it's actually going to be better or not. So PSP Vita and PSP Go were a total flop, but everyone bought it because they had the system and the hardware already, so it just kind of seemed like an add-on. So PSVR will definitely, I think, be a lot better than the Go and the Vita because it is an immersive experience. But people will be able to just kind of plug it into their PS4. They're not going to have to worry about finding like an Oculus-ready PC and all that jazz. So that will definitely become a lot more common. I think the biggest change I see in, I guess, more like 5 to 10 years is AR and VR will be consumed a bit differently. I kind of see them being on the same headset. AR and VR are two distinctly different things that sit on the same spectrum. Yeah. So it's just a matter of how immersive and how immersed you really are. So the biggest changes I see is that VR and AR are both going to be consumed for, I guess, useful applications. So think developer terminals, 3D modelers, art. Consumer-wise, it's definitely going to be huge. Where I see a lot of money going into directly is definitely going to be in the useful applications. You can kind of see that with Microsoft HoloLens. Their entire development team that sits on the HoloLens teams sees their terminal within the HoloLens for 8 hours a day, which is very, very impressive. But yeah, the biggest thing that I see is just the merger between AR and VR will dissipate gradually.
Great, thank you. Questions from the audience?
Okay, we don't have wireless mics.
No, so you're going to yell it and I'll repeat it.
Please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Grace. I'm Gaston, and I'm just very curious about, like, are you guys going to showcase your product or like your website like afterwards? Because I'm like very interested to learn more about like what like you guys talk about like what you're working on, so I want to like learn more about.
So I'm going to repeat it for a couple of reasons. One, after this, you'll be able to find this at KSVN TV, so ksvn.tv. So that'll be available for anybody to go and look at. So Grace is asking, is there a place that we're going to put all this stuff after, or at least about our company, so you could follow up on it? Could be a thumbs up, thumbs down.
I have my gear and my game with me, so if anyone wants to just come up to me afterwards and say I want to play, you're welcome to.
If there's like a whiteboard or anything, I think we can probably all just put our names, emails, and like company on it. So I think that'll probably be the most ideal way to go about things.
Program the names of the speakers are written down.
Oh yeah, I've got my nails over there on the table, and yeah, I can give you a close-up demo if you want. You can also download that. Nails. It's in the App Store and also in Google Play. And if you actually want to like actually buy it, I can sell it to you as well. I'm just being a dirty entrepreneur. You can buy holograms direct from me.
So I brought my gear to show you transport, and specifically the mink shoe piece. But I have all kinds of other content also available. But I'd want to, give everybody a chance that wants to try. But yeah, I've got it here, and it's actually available in the App Store, so you can download it as well. It's called Transport. Sorry.
Happy to connect with people afterwards and to leave my email if they want to continue the conversation about the type of content.
I have a demo on my phone. I got some cardboard and stuff if people want to check it out. You can best connect with me on Facebook. I think I'm tagged in the Facebook group. You can find me under Erica Lee. I just hate email.
Oh, well, I have Facebook, LinkedIn, all the things. It's just Gemma at Discovr Labs, but we'll write it down somewhere.
And we have Urban Safari was 5 and Tilpros.
Yeah, it's funny. I went looking to go and see who made it had a question, and I see the HTC wand up. I was like, okay, in the back.
So nobody's kind of really defined like a standard for copying and pasting simple gestures for VR. Have you guys had any success with some of these gestures or standard features that typically we do with like a keyboard that we can't do in VR?
So the question was, from a usability from user interface point of view, are there any standards yet starting to come out on gestures and copy, paste, things along those lines?
Yeah, so that's actually super interesting because that's a problem we ran into when we were talking to an investor. Consumer Vive had just come out. They were trying it on. And essentially, one of their one of their like fears was that there is no just standard gesturizing, kind of like if you open your iPhone, there's like standard gestures in every app, usually like swipe to go back, drag and swipe to like open a menu, but in VR that's entirely non-existent so far. And it definitely doesn't help that there's so many different platforms and different HMDs that have entirely different controllers. So when the Oculus Touch comes out, the gestures for that game is going to be entirely different to like maybe the Vive version of that game. On the Vive, a couple of standard ones have come out. So it's like click to grab, double click to, click to grab it, double click to, I don't know, like grab and hold. But there are no standardized gestures yet. I know Microsoft is trying to fix that in AR with like the air tap. But yeah, that is definitely a big problem, and that's like there's a learning curve to every single game that a person tries in VR, not even game, just experience, because there are no standardized gestures of like push the arrow forward to go, just like in any other game, or like X to jump in any game. So that's definitely like an interesting problem that I think a lot of people are confronting.
I know the company Meta, they're an AR one, and I think HoloLens is probably following along, but they're using like pretty similar gestures that you already use on a trackpad. So like grab, you just do the natural hand gesture, like use 2 fingers like in and out to be able to zoom in and out, and then push forward and back. But they're having problems where like it's kind of like a flat surface is like your, I guess, touch space, and you can't actually grab in depths. And then I've used Leap Motion before, and the hand tracking is like pretty good, but it'll lag a bit, or when you try to grab something, it won't grab it, and do rotational turning as well. But yeah, that'll be improved, I'm sure.
So this is the first time. Basically, my question is about user experience, design, and women. So VR is mounted on your face, and it gets warm in there, and you kind of have to like really stick it to your face, right? And what do women do with their face? They wear makeup, quite a bit of makeup. So there is a lot of bronzer, highlighter, blush, eyebrow game going on. Lashes get stuck, whatever. So I've always been wondering, how is that a deterrent for many women to try VR? Because like, you want that stuff, kind of rubbing all over your face, and then someone else having to have your makeup on their face to the next person. And if anyone knows of any hardware company trying to solve that.
Okay, so the question was the hygienic side of VR, which is makeup and dealing with all the things that happen when you put a headset on for any amount of time.
Can I respond to that? Because I feel like I'm the guinea pig of that whole reality. But recently I was at this AWE event and I tried on a lot of headsets, and I'm sure they were passed around between millions of AR junkies. And I've got an eye infection now. So that's a reality of this hardware issue is I wear makeup as well. I'm like plaster my eyes with eyeshadow and everything. So a lot of that basically is just contaminated in my eye. And there you go. I am your guinea pig for your new company, and I will spritz whatever it is that you want to put in that hardware. I'm like spritzing it up. But yeah, seriously, it's a real consideration, and I wasn't really aware of it before, but now it's like, hey, this has actually personally affected me and I'm in pain. There you go.
Well, I mean, I've seen, HTC makes these, kind of looks like a thong when it's off, but like it's like this little like strip of cloth that fits around the opening, and so they just kind of don't pop off and on very well. If you look at the gear, it velcros off and on, and I did the Six Flags ride, the VR ride there, and you gotta think like gross, there's a lot of people using that. So they have the leather ones there, and so they wipe them down in between each one. And as far as a deterrent, I mean, I gotta say that when I'm getting ready for work, I'm doing the straight hair thing phone because like I know I'm gonna be in and out of Gears all day or Vives or whatever, and I bring a brush with me. So like I am preparing for that reality. But I think if I was like a big fancy girl, then I probably wouldn't do VR. Because it's not really for the vain. I don't know. It's you got to get in there and be willing to get messy.
I can add a short note. I personally have liked the PlayStation VR that I've tried. It has like, I don't know exactly the material they use, but it's like a silicone or some sort of mixed polymer for like the outlining of the face suction, I guess, instead of like the foam where that'll pick up more makeup, so you can wipe it down a lot easier. Plus, you can change the distance from like how close it is to your eyes if you're wearing glasses or you have a nose bridge or lack thereof. And also, like the band positions the weight right on your forehead and distributes it in like a circular sort of halo versus like the little cross strap that you're seeing on the gear.
It's
and
more
the
like a
Vive.
hat.
Yeah, that like ruins your hair and then it like pushes the pressure on your temples and like ruins your makeup and like mascara and like I totally know exactly what that's like. Like I carry a makeup bag with me for that reason. Yeah.
Okay, next question.
And my question is about the UI for VR in public spaces. So you can't really use audio because there's also some privacy issues if you're talking to your VR in like a country. And you can't use gestures in public, so that's also weird. So like how do you see us interacting in public with a VR?
So the questions, of course, on the public use of some of these VR experiences, whether it's going to be the audio coming from it, if it's going to be the hand gestures, how do you not look kind of funny doing this in public? And privacy issues and things along those lines. And how and my question, how is that different just than just general cell phone use?
Let's see. So I was actually living in San Francisco when the whole cell phone thing started in the late 90s. And there was a guy like walking down the street talking to himself. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And he had a Bluetooth earpiece in. And I really thought he was insane. So, I mean, I don't see how, I just feel like we're kind of in that weird phase where people are like, what the hell is that person doing? And I think it'll just become normal, like, oh, he's got an earpiece in, or oh, they're doing VR. So I don't know. I mean, the Six Flags ride, they didn't have audio, which I actually thought took away from the experience because audio is so very important when it comes to VR. So I guess I was quizzical because I didn't really understand like the privacy thing. Like, what do you mean?
So if you're interacting with a VR in like a country and you're talking to it, if you use it to do any kind
So when we're because we do a ton of demos like all the time at the office, we kind of just get you in there and leave you alone. Like we're not really talking to you. Sometimes you pull one ear back if they have questions and then you answer them, but it's kind of a one universe experience right now unless you're doing some kind of alt space thing. So they're inside, so you're not hand moving to them, you're not really talking to them, you're saying, here's the thing, here's your wand, go. And then if they can't figure out how to open the elevator or whatever it is that they're doing, then they pull an ear back and then you can kind of tell them. There are cool features though, like in the Gear and the Vive where you can push a button and you can kind of start to see the room. I haven't really used it too much, but I don't really see that as a thing, really. Because it's really about being immersed. And so, like, I'm worried about, like, oh, I got to turn off all my notifications so they don't get interrupted, or, so I don't really see that. I don't know. Do you guys have any more comments?
The only thing I thought about was, like, audio is usually, in VR, is, like, consumed through headphones, usually, just, like, enhances the experience exponentially. Gestures, I could see that maybe with like AR where you're actually using your hands and you're making all sorts of crazy gestures, but in VR everything tends to be tethered so far. So I think most of the times you'll get a pass because they'll see a controller in your hand, so they'll know you're doing something. But yeah, I don't think that's actually too big of a problem.
Sono italiano, è facile. Still use your hands all the time anyhow. Okay, so the question is, how do you prototype in VR
Without just building it.
without just building it? Okay. And could that be any? The question is not just on you. It could be anything, right? Just it could be Unreal. Yep.
I mean, I think at some point you have to ask yourself, what is a prototype? I mean, prototype is sort of like a construct. I think it usually just means like not a full application. It's just like a dip your toe in, see if the idea is cool. So, I mean, I would just suggest use whatever engine is working for you for whatever bigger projects you would want to do. And I think actually Unity is a really great solution for that because it's so quick to pick up and so quick to make things. So personally, we use our custom engine when we do prototyping, and it works out okay. But whatever engine you're used to, I don't think there's a reason you shouldn't be using Unity for prototyping. Personally.
Yeah, a prototype to me is kind of just like an early version of what you're intending to build. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do it on Unity, or whatever engine. Let's just use engine. Yeah, I guess if you're building something, the prototype will have to be built, and there really is no other way to build it except by like doing it on your engine. The only thing I can think of is maybe if you built it on like a less strenuous engine to get a more general version of it. So I could think of maybe in this case, instead of building it on Unity, building out like a smaller version on like Construct 2 and seeing how that worked out. Construct 2 is like a less intensive engine. It's kind of more drag and drop. But yeah, anything before that would kind of be like storyboarding-ish or just kind of like wireframing.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in paper, just getting out our ideas in paper. But we use some 3D like Maya just to design in. But there is no way to figure out how a user is going to be in the space until you actually build it. And I have to say that has also been a huge learning curve for me because I'm used to doing it all on paper and working it all out and then maybe doing, a couple like prototypes in some of those online prototyping tools. But you just cannot do that in VR because you can never understand like how far the user is away from the poster until you get them in the headset. And I mean, someone needs to maybe invent something.
Well, let me ask a question. Gemma, you had mentioned about the Microsoft folks that are in HoloLens when they work. And so I think your question is, how do I see what I'm doing without going in? If I were to reverse that, are there tools that say, no, I'm just going to be in. I create in the experience. Are there tools like that? Yeah, so Unity and Unreal have both built tools for developing VR experiences within VR, and it's usually kind of just, it speeds up the process in that you have pre-made assets, and instead of having to like pull your whole like terrain around and individually drop like a landscape, you can just minimize the landscape, stand in the middle of it and be like, I want a mountain range there and a river there, throw another one there for good measure, which makes it easier. Microsoft team is very different in that they're doing basically the same thing any developer would do, except it's on their HoloLens. Makes it a bit easier for them to have a couple different terminals pulled up on their HoloLens and a couple different ones on their computer, practical applications, people modeling stuff in real time in front of them, and they can see what it looks like in a 3D space versus a 2D space. It's, I guess, kind of like prototyping. It is a good preview of what you are building, though.
My name's Rebecca, and I have the shoe video that's here. It's Leaf Shoes. It's a Canadian shoe company. And I work with WeVR. I have a question. A lot of the times we have these amazing fashion shows or products in the fashion industry, and I have a shoe company. And I've created a piece that's more observing my product. Interacting with the product, is that just not available right now? Because I can't even wrap my head around how they can try on a shoe or interact with the product more than what I've done in my head, because there's a lot to it. So if you guys have any suggestions.
We're not like as an industry, I think like we're really picking up orientation and positional tracking of your head and maybe your hands, and that's it. And people, I mean, there's niche companies who are going out to like, you know, the body suits and things like that, but feet are just not getting the love right now. So I don't know if anyone else has a crystal ball, more information about what's coming for feet.
Well, there's actually a couple of companies working, like 6 Sense, for example. They're when they were thinking about like v-commerce, right, they specifically focused on shoes because there was an enormous demand from brands. So that's something that they're doing. So I tried it on like a while back. I'm sure that they're much more advanced now, but you know, it's the beginning, right? But it's actually really cool because so their experience is that you come in and you just like they'll have like some haptic stuff. You grab a shoe and then you're able to try it on, and then you're able to kind of walk around and then see for the whole 360 perspective. So there is some stuff and it's in the works, but the question is, so it's right. So that's the content side of things, but then how do you distribute it, right? And like how do you get your audience and what platforms? So there's a bit, it's a bit early for v-commerce, but that's definitely something that, you know, brands are looking at for sure.
Additional insights about it all. Okay, so essentially I design fashion products. You can wear them as fashion. They have their own value as fashion. You can express yourself through it as fashion. But I just give extra values, so I just put an interactive AR virtual gaming experience on top of it. So you get that extra AR thing, and then, you know, essentially I can license it out to all kinds of third-party developers, and they can put their AR experiences on any future fashion product that I choose to release under my brand. So, I mean, that's just another way of thinking about it, just beyond try before you buy style experiences using VR or AR. Like, yeah, what does it look like on me before I buy it? How about, like, you know, what would it look like if I wore the shoes and then it unlocked some type of experience? So it's just another way of thinking about it.
So, you know, virtual reality is how you take the user somewhere, and augmented reality is how you bring something to you. And so in the case of shoe shopping, I mean, maybe you could make some kind of like cheap nylon type sock that AR could scan, and then your whole like closet of shoes could be on your foot, and you could, I mean, I could see that kind of being a fun shopping experience, and a cool use of AR.
I think for like retail and shopping with AR, one of the biggest obstacles they're gonna face is like how do you simulate like the touch and comfort of clothing, like you know, a shirt, seeing that it fits versus if it's silk and linen, like it's gonna fit differently on your body. And like when you wear shoes, it might look good, but you know, exerting pressure on it and gravity and feeling if the sole, you know, connects to your foot and stuff, I feel like that is gonna be very hard to mimic, even with haptic feedback, you know, wrapped around her foot, or even like full body suits. I
buy a bunch of stuff on Amazon without ever trying it on.
Yeah, but you know, a company like Zappos, you can buy like 6 shoes and ship one back. So I think it might expedite the process of like shoe selection in terms of visual designs, but actual comfort, that's probably something that's going to be tackled way later on. Yeah.
Okay, we actually do have time for one last.
So add that to like her question, like I think it's really interesting because I know like Nike was like doing something with their communications. I'm just curious, like, do you guys think like AR or VR could be a transformation of technology that adapting into like makeup or like clothing? Will that change the experience of like that like whole shopping experience, or do you guys think this is just gonna be like the next PSP or something that's like play-ish thing? Will this be like a laptop, or will this be like a Game Boy? I'm just curious. How do you guys think? Like, is there any like
Jody?
For shopping, I see it as an additional thing. I don't know. I mean, we don't really know where it's going yet. But I think in terms of bringing that product into your real world, and you know, like I'm redoing my house, so like it would be really cool to bring in a rug and see it on the floor. I mean, I think that could be very transformational in terms of, you know, bringing items into your world and seeing how they work. like, I want to buy a pair of shoes. Let me like see it with this dress that I'm thinking of. I think that could be really different and exactly solving a certain. So you have to think of user problems, and this is how you make great product. You think of the issues that users are having and you solve them, and then you have a great business case, and when you match the user need with a business case, that's when you have product gold. And so I think if you can think of all the issues that users have with trying on makeup or shopping for shoes, and you isolate those and then you use the technology to solve those problems, I think you've got something really magical. I mean, the Snapchat thing with the augmented reality and putting on all the faces, I mean, I think that you're seeing right now that that's like that's taking off. People are into it. Now, if you could do that with pinup girl makeup or new wave makeup or whatever, I mean, that I think it could be really cool. Okay, time is up. Sorry.
Okay. Any more questions?
But you said time is up.
No, I mean because.
So,
Sorry,
well,
Jody,
so.
I didn't mean to finish the answer. Sorry.
Is there any specific company that already started?
I don't know. I mean, I'm in the entertainment side. So.
Okay, I can take it, answer it, and then I'll take us out. So there are folks that are doing it right now for at least product selection, product marketing. So if you have a headset on, you also have the ability to do eye tracking. And there's studies where someone will go and put them into a virtual shopping area, watch what you're looking at, and instead of just asking you by taking a survey later, they can look at the report of where you were looking and how much time you were spending in any particular thing and saying, they spent more time on this red set of shoes versus the blue set of shoes. Or where your eye is looking for product placement on end caps, things along those lines. So not solving the problems of how to buy your clothes, but maybe how to sell them. So thank you for the questions. Thank you to the panel. Very, very enlightening. And Owen, thank you for having us. And we'll all be up here afterwards, so come and take a chat.